to the team. We'll bring in that information as we get it. Let's have a look at the replay for Arvid Lindblad. Into his starting process now. They do a practice. This involvement with Oracle Red Bull Racing and with Red Bull generally. Downshifts are shocking at 4 back into the garage. To come back to my point on Arvid Lindblad and why I think that has a story. Adjusting their race start, but they're going to give more time before the red lights go on to alleviate the starting procedure for Arvid Lindblad that we saw there as he was just under 53 minutes remaining. Rounds out your top 5, but some of the numbers are well spread beyond that, so they're not really indicative numbers at that stage on the totem on the left of your screen. Correct, but I'm told, I think Kimmy quietly went out maybe on Tuesday and met some of spent a bit of time out there lately. Good luck with that. It's another story we will continue to watch. How will he was pushed back down to the Racing Bulls program, and then it took him a while to find his feet. I know you've spent a bit of time with Liam over the journey. He's back though, isn't he? It was like it just took him a few races to almost get himself out of Red Bull mode and back into Racing Bulls.
So I worked on the New Zealand coverage over summer, which fans in the stands may have seen here on Fox and KO, what they call the next innings. Back out to you to get set for the year. I didn't talk about it as being necessary. Reset and so on, and he was really excited about getting his teeth into it.
Franco Colapinto. Tyres, they're all running out there on the medium complex. The C3, the medium, the C4, the soft, the C5.
We talked about the link with karting, and I mean, it's just about everyone in the field. Young, aspiring racers. Just reminded me that Kimmy was on track and hopefully won last year too, so that's just amazing.
I'm going to, you mentioned Lee Hanacek and we are. 2015, he was even standing out back in his karting days.
I love that, and you can find, I think, online some stuff of him being on the grid. Who knows, maybe in fast forward 10, 15 years time, it could be them on the grid, and we're hopeful that we're inspiring not just drivers.
Points on it, I saw Nick Monster, who's taken over from James Serra. In the pit paddock right now and amongst the teams. That's probably a good time to bring you in with 48 minutes remaining in this practice.
I understand there's a suspected power unit related issue which will prevent tough reactive margin to
Should be updating us from the paddock area during this session. So at the moment we're just under, what are we, under 48 minutes. Top five, a little bit of a gap back to Liam Lawson.
To let you know, this session last year, the fastest time was a 1 minute 17. Building into a brand new season of technical regulation. Come out on a Friday. It is a revolution of technical regulations. Has there been anything bigger? Major platform change? Now, is it bigger than that in summer? Embedded in that process, and they were back in that kind of 2014 chapter, if you will, of So what have they done? They've made the cars wider. They've attempted to make the cars easier to follow, therefore, for passing.
sleeker, cleaner.
They've increased that hybrid component to a 50-50 split between battery and internal combustion power. That's one of the challenges that they're trying to face or deal with at the moment. There's a lot history and other numbers, you'd be champing at the bit to get into this commentary session.
You know me far too well, Cam. Thank you very much for having me again.
Welcome, mate. Great to have you back down under.
It's great to be here as well, as I always say on Fridays in Melbourne. Around the world, this circus we call Formula 1. This is one of those ones where we think, well, I'm not missing that one, because we love coming back to Melbourne. 1995, post-Senna, we had massive regulations.
gear up, and that was a bit of a lock-up. He went hard to the left, trying to open up the entry. Present this year,
yeah, right.
And right in the middle of the breaking point for a lot of these cars. Just thinking about 96 and then into 98 is the one I wanted to talk about. There was a bit of a technical generation. 25 laps for the 98 race, and that was part of the deal they had. There may be an element of that style of car management this weekend as well.
Some flow-vis paint, so Ferrari obviously looking a little something there just around aerodynamic performance.
The only reason I say is I'm still thinking back to Australia. Going back to the conversation last night discussing whether Ron Dennis would have done the same thing as Zach Brown. Mika Hakkinen said it was true to McLaren, the way they ran it. He said, DC is still a gentleman to this day for what he did. He goes, I can trust him. We did a deal before the race started, and he stayed true to that deal. The question is, I look at some of the other teams, Kimi Antonelli, George Russell, will they have such winner from Australia, and it just feels like
Yeah, I mean, of course we had obviously been frustrated with not these numbers. It is starting to inform so very frustrating finals.
conditions, became an issue, and Oscar Piastri coming into kind of final confidence. Be able to deliver in 2026.
Oh, a little bit. I got to out on track for Valtteri Bottas.
Okay.
The race win this weekend, but I really appreciate it. Just to finish that point, you did two very
we saw very briefly then Mattia Bonotto in the garage before as Bortoletto crossed the line. He's in the top 10, 1.3 away from the number of Verstappen and Esteban Ocon concluding the top 10.
some time available, and that was something else I was going to talk to you about, Sean. I think back to it feels like it wasn't that long ago that the air rate came out in this session. I think Fernando Alonso was the driver.
Yes, some unfortunate parallels with what's happening at Aston Martin right now, but hopefully it won't be that terminal, it won't be a whole season.
That little tricky start to things. It seemed clear that he was in the lane there for a while.
Taking it very conservative so far. I think they've got a lot more pace to give than that. Certainly judging from what we saw in the pre-season in Bahrain, they'll be a lot closer to the front once they get there.
What we've seen whenever we've had a massive change of regulation or even a decent evolution of a regulation change. Get Messi out on track again. It's around the back part. That's Sainz and Gasly. Heading down into turn 11.
Sainz, I think everything is a good part of the
that's a tricky part of the track.
So far. Here's a replay of when it got awkward here a moment ago. You're riding with Carlos Sainz.
Yeah, he just avoided here and went, I'll get past you. No, I won't. I'll just stick to the inside, don't need to push on with it just yet. And that was a great shot. You see the rear wing lie down there? So we've got the Macarena wing. Out on the bump and the lock up there, they'll adjust around that, a lot of these drivers, but it's a great shot for the Alpine with the way it just lies down in straight line. I like the idea, certainly the theory behind it. And if it does, Sean, Formula One, everyone will have the limbo wing next.
Yes, certainly. That's the great thing about these new rate changes. Particularly with the rear wings in pre-season, and we've seen some different cycles. It is interesting when we get these new rules, you always see the most diverse thinking. Of course, over time, they'll all sort of regress to the means and realise which solution is best.
So in the meantime, we're nearly at the halfway mark of this first practice session, and Charles Leclerc on top. As well, so both their cars in the top three. So Lewis Hamilton fourth, Oscar Piastri is fifth, Kimi Antonelli ahead of the Kiwi Liam Lawson in seventh, then George Russell, Esteban Ocon, and one of the Revolut Audi F1 machines in the hands of Gabby Bortoletto is 10th.
First of the soft tyre runners we see. Between turns 5 and 6 is Lindblad. We're watching the rookie who's up against the time of 1:21.2 set by Leclerc. Long way off the time. Tyres. Trying to rotate through 13 and 14. It's going to take a bit of getting your head around.
So Arvid Lindblad doesn't have a time on. Stat, I think, from Sean Kelly, is it not? Most successful season of his F1 career in 2025. We know the origins of that statistic.
May or may not be working directly with a manufacturer that has silver as a big component.
I do provide, if you've ever wondered if there's a guy who does those lower third graphics, there is a guy that I'm that guy. I apologise if you don't mind.
I just think that was the greatest understatement I've ever heard. I've got a bit of a thing for stats.
Yeah, well, it has been said.
So let's recap things for you. Under half an hour. It's super serious, but there has
See him in his racing rules entry. If he comes out and out.
It could be what we saw in pre-season testing, which is there are some corners that will go around and will just not use the electrical energy because they're stockpiling it to use down.
Oh, you've opened a door. Am I allowed to walk through it, Rusty? Because we can start talking about something.
Off you go.
I've been championing a bit to get into this. The big challenge they've been essential.
This is detrimental to racing. It's not as good as it was back in my day. I mean, Formula One fans, as a collective group of people, we love to whinge about, it was better in yesteryear, blah, blah, blah.
itself on overcoming those technical challenges, at being at the cutting edge, and at the end of the day, you have it's up to you to find the best way to achieve that, isn't it? At the end of the day.
And furthermore, I mean, when we had the refueling, detrimental to the racing because everybody was running 10-10, so you didn't have cars. They're not nearly as entertaining as a lot of races.
Of a second is the difference between George Russell and Kimi Antonelli at the moment, 5th and 6th. Another little thing to draw your attention to as well, Nico Hülkenberg for what have we got there, Sean? The top 5 runs all running on that Red Bull Ford and to got together. They pair up with something new. Even the one person they come out that whole notion of getting involved in the sport under the company like that began that journey 3.5 years ago. Through the middle, 17.69 was close enough to Verstappen, so this could be a good time. Correction on the exit in turn 13. Hamilton remains in 4th, so Ferrari in 2 and 4, a Red Bull in 1 and 3. But back to that forward comment, when we talk about engineers and regulation changes, all of a sudden I've been thinking about Carroll Smith, who was a renowned used to make mistakes and you could put something on the bottom of the car. Turn 1 there before. Also, two little radio message. Let's listen here to Isaac. Big lock up he's talking about there. And one up. That's the class on his car too. And this vibration.
conditions that we've seen with a lot of these cars out there at the moment. That push down into turn 1, where we've seen the trouble with the cars so far today, particularly the open wheel cars. Turn 1 has been an issue running long. It was earlier at tailwinds. It's not going to be wind related, it's going to be pushing the limits of adhesion down at 1. We've seen the bump at turn 3 cause some issues. The change of direction at 10 is always a challenge here. And outside of that, it seems to be all systems. So on the hard compound tyre.
McLaren reporting via Twitter there that Lando Norris, the reason you saw him back in the garage. Currently in this session.
It should be added that FP1, at least under the previous rules, was not something you lived and died on to run. Ran, the rookie drivers.
And ahead there by what we're talking about 10%.
Your first time at a motorsport event. Practice 1 is more about getting a baseline set up for your car. We'll see some potential qualifying simulations, for want of a better term, in practice 2 later today. We'll see more in 3 than we probably would have seen because of the evolution of the car, the track, and a number of other items.
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of hosting in hospitality suites during the season, and I usually shop these sessions against the internet. Whereas once we get to FP2, we start to see some proper performance.
Good opportunity to educate a number of people that are brand new to sport. A heap of kids out there. When you say engine mode, what do you mean, Sean?
Well, obviously, running race mode, where you're actually safeguarding the engine, conserving the engine. There's a whole manner of different settings they can do. It's a bit, I use the 1980s comparison earlier. It's a bit like the difference between turning the boost control up and down. And there is a boost mode in the car this year. So
to make it simple for people out there, you basically can turn up the power component, but that actually the less you get out of them. So at various times, you dial it up and down as necessary. Remember the days of hammer time with Lewis Hamilton when he got given everything? Segment, you get brand new tyres, you get crazy mode, and you are let loose on the
area there before. You'll notice that the former world champion Fernando Alonso is 22nd in this session with no time. So that's why we don't see Fernando out there.
And it should be added that Lance Stroll has only done 1 timed lap so far and is nearly 30 seconds off the pace. So Aston Martin essentially have not run in this session. They've just gone round and done 1 almost ceremonial lap. And that's all they've got.
A couple of other housekeeping items that we'll cover off in, what did you call it? Instagram hour?
Instagram hour.
There was chat that we were going to lower the pit lane speed limit to 64. An hour was the message I got from them. So we'll find out more about that protocol for the start. 120.736. Verstappen, Leclerc, Hadjar, Russell, Antonelli, your top 6. The 120.7 is the fastest time we've seen. We've got a hazard out on track, the yellow flag, and that'll be because at turn 10 on the exit, Albon is stopped.
So just under 12 minutes remaining in this session, and there, right on cue, is what Cam is talking about.
And the reason they'll get that one under control, if we can hear from him, was power steering and everything. The electronics in these cars mean if you lose it, well, it's hydraulic pressure. And he's pulled up on driver's right 310 screen there. So if the car can roll, they'll roll it back into position. James Voles, we were talking about earlier and what he's been building with his team. Let's have a look. Out of it before he's ever rolled into turn 9. Didn't sound great, does it?
And there's nothing visible on the dashboard either.
So the lights are out on that, isn't it? So power out. If you look down at the steering wheel, that would normally be lit up. You would have numbers written in the screen and it looks like the power out.
It should be said that what we say to the camera has run out. That's not quite what we meant. We don't mean those terms.
We normally say the tyres out. I don't know what we say now in this new high, like full-blown 50-50.
Yeah.
There we go, the battery's out.
Yeah, have you got a charger?
Yeah.
Plug it in. It's like our phone.
What do you use, USB-C?
Yeah.
We are. Exactly. Attempting to do right now. Get this one back underway. They're covering it under they can use, they will need each of the teams. And the other piece of housekeeping, when I mentioned it in the build-up to this session, Rusty, but for those that weren't listening at the time, we traditionally lock teams out from working on their cars overnight. That has been cleared for this event. Went off, had a shower, came back to the track not long after.
This is like Formula 1 25 years ago.
I knew you would be licking your lips.
Yes.
Your mate you went and hung out with in Murray Bridge and did the bend with, he's also salivating over there, loving your 80s Formula 1.
Where this started to change, where the teams are changing engines overnight and switching to a race engine, not necessarily a look at the engine here, but
no, I told you this is the bit I was worried when he said it was hydraulics and the thing was shut down. My concern was they'd almost need the go-jacks out there, Rusty, to be able to hook it up and get it out. So good job by the officials and also Alex Albin doing his bit. One of the other pieces I wanted to discuss with you, tidy up, Belfry Bosshouse, how funny was it? They thought he had his 5... because he does not have that penalty over can start the race where he qualifies. So he did all sorts of funny lines.
We're under virtual safety car, 8.5 minutes remain in this session. Lewis Hamilton leads the way with a 1 minute 27.36.
themselves, as in the local representation, are going all out. I'm loving it, the way they are embracing it.
They have done everything. I mean, Alan McNish, who was their driver development manager, I think is the title, has been here for about a week. He got to drive that famous proper. 6 months, they only announced it in recent weeks, but I think they'd had him signed away for a little bit. People like Freddie Slater, who's coming through.
on entry there, just running over the back. Let's see what happened. There's a little bump in the bobble. Turn in. Power on.
It wasn't a gradual thing, it suddenly spat him off the track.
Yeah, talking about how difficult they are to drive at slow speed. Yeah, engine braking had a massive There's a number of issues they're having, I'm telling you. Steers up north.
Corners there by those of you in the grandstands on the main straight at Albert Park is the Ferrari.